coming to celebrate Future Day. My name is Xing. I'm a Technical Information Manager at KPMG, and by night I organise these transhumanism meetups around looking into the future. So today we have some really awesome speakers to talk to you about, and I'll introduce them shortly. But just first of all, how many of you have been to Future Day before in the past? Oh, wow, that's a good turnout. And how many of you guys even heard of Future Day before yesterday's promotional events? Yeah, fantastic. And how many of you guys have heard of transhumanism? Sorry. Oh, great. I think we're spreading. We're doing well in the numbers. It was a very targeted audience. But yeah, so here we've got a hashtag today. Just this is classroom 2. Bathrooms just around the corner here. If you want to tweet anything out and take any photos, it's hashtag Future Day 2018. So let's get right started in here. So why Future Day? We've got so much distractions happening every day. Who's sleeping with who in Hollywood? Who's sleeping with who in Parliament? And it's just about everywhere you can go. So there's very little sort of attention space that you can fight with. So one of the quotes that I got from the Future Day movement is, so let us remind ourselves to remember the future. It's an editable part of history of a time to come. So, this is something, a day we can actually celebrate the movement to think about what is the future that we want to create. So Adam Ford and Ben Goetzel. So Ben Goetzel is one of the founders of SingularityNet. Him and Adam, who's in Melbourne, who co-founds Science, Technology in the Future, a similar meetup to Transhumanism City, and we're actually working together to bring about the transhumanism movement. They decided to essentially create this Future Day movement. So I think it's going to be a fantastic opportunity to hear your thoughts on what you guys want in the future when the technology is accelerating so much like this. So just a little bit on transhumanism. What is it? It's it sounds a bit scary. It sounds like a loaded term, but it's really the emergence of convergence of technology and human biology. So we think about how we're using Google to actually think about how to search for collective intelligence in humanity. That's sort of almost like we're all cyborgs, right? We're sort of tapping into the collective intelligence that's been built out through the cloud. But how do we bring that forward even further? What if we actually connected our brains to the cloud, right? That's sort of that direct integration. We'll talk about a little bit about super intelligence. And here we also have super longevity, which is how do we actually use technology to live longer and healthier, happier lives? And obviously the super well-being, how do we use technology now to essentially solve the issues around our Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Our basic needs moved up to the self-actualization, happiness needs. So the recent developments around super longevity, you would have heard, there's drugs like metformin that has increased the health span of mice by 30 to 40%, rapamycin. Those sort of drugs are actually working in mammals, and they're actually doing human trials right now to extend healthy human lives. We've got also people like Elizabeth Parrish, who's started her own company, being patient zero and doing gene therapy on herself to essentially see how she can extend the length of her telomeres using gene therapy. So yeah, she's reported positive results, but we need that broader clinical trial approach to make it scientific. So this is sort of an example of biohacking, citizen science at the forefront, working to actually make science happen. And collectively, if we get the numbers, we actually can put it together in a paper to make it happen. Nebula genomics also happened recently. We've got George Church, who's sort of got his fingers everywhere in anything genomics based. He's sort of a co-founder of Nebula Genomics, looking to put your DNA onto the blockchain so you can actually sell it yourself. You can monetize the sequencing of your DNA if you wanted to, right? You can also keep it secure that way as well. And this is one way because gene editing really requires that data, but the sequencing of DNA itself has been dropping exponentially since when it was a multi-$100-million project, only a few decades ago, but look at it today. It's looking at under $1,000. And as we get closer and closer, we could look at a freemium model using this sort of potential technology. And China has actually gene edited 86 people already. So this is as of 2015, but they're only recently reported by the Wall Street Journal. And this really sort of got through CRISPR over this sort of this trough that they had, because people were reporting that it wasn't going to be as effective on humans, given how our immune system works and potentially could block it. CRISPR is something that could literally, like a cut and paste approach to your DNA. And this is looking at how we can actually mass supply this, potentially to increase our healthy lifespans. Super intelligence, I covered briefly already, but this is where you got Elon Musk putting $27 million into Neuralink, trying to link the human brain to computers. You got guys like Brian Johnson, who's the founder of Baintree, throwing $100 million into Kernel to essentially do the similar thing. You've got achievements from AlphaGo from Google. AlphaGo Zero actually came out after they beat that World Go chess player. But then that AlphaGo Zero was essentially started from scratch. It wasn't any sort of coding itself. It just learned from all the games that it had been playing, and it beat it in essentially a day. They released it online, and now every single day they're actually competing against more players and beating it every single time. So they're trying to apply that sort of same methodology, this recurrent neural network technology, to a broad spectrum of use cases. Like I think they were solving data center issues, trying to optimize those problems. But I think where it really will hit the home, linking back to super longevity, is how they can use that to understand creating new chemical and new drugs, drug discovery, and applying that into increasing the healthy human lifespan. And you also got open AI initiatives. Also, I think Elon Musk recently stepped down from the board of that company because he was hiring their best AI engineers. So there was a bit of a conflict of interest, but he's continuing to donate to that company. They've actually beat the world's top Dota 2 player recently, and they're looking to apply that sort of same methodology to an open source environment. They're calling it Gym. You're essentially able to train Gym on any sort of video games, input-output, to use that sort of library of code to create this sort of general intelligence that's looking forward. And also SingularityNet, right? Recently, we got Ben Goetzel's team releasing an artificial general intelligence coin. So this means that now people that are contributing algorithm to this platform can monetize their AI if it's being used as part of a software environment. And also you'll be able to trace it all the way back to the original coders. So it's all exciting stuff. They're trying to bring about artificial general intelligence. What does that mean when we have computers that are smarter than human? Obviously, guys like this essentially looking to merge with the AI to not be made redundant. I think it's going to be a very competitive environment with us and machines. So it's going to be people, the early adopters of technology will essentially keep that competitive edge going forward. So China's actually stated their 2030 goal is to achieve AI dominance. I think along with Vladimir Putin and just about the rest of the world, but the US was very quiet when that first announcement happened in July. Now they're starting to catch up as the translations of the reports come out. They realize that, hang on a second, China's got the Baidu, the Alibabas, and the Tencent versus our Google, Amazon, and Facebook. And also with the Chinese government, when they say that they want to do something, they achieve it, right? So they don't have that same sort of political wall as they face. So what does that mean for the Chinese local legislation? So if they throw money at an AI initiative locally, they'll be incentivized to do that. There's going to be a lot of money lost in corruption, right? But still, I think that same push towards at the local level, at the state level, and at the whole country level, they're actually going to achieve by 2030 an $150 billion AI industry. I think you guys would have seen, very familiar with this graph. This is Ray Kurzweil's law of accelerating returns, just to illustrate how sort of on a logarithmic scale, how exponential technologies can sort of evolve. We've had the agricultural revolution 8,000 years ago, and I think it's another 120 years since the Industrial Revolution, and then we had the light bulbs 80 years after that. We had the moon landing 22 years after that. We had the World Wide Web, and 9 years after that we had the human genome sequenced. And you can sort of see how it came from one paradigm, this sort of initially back in 1900s computer ranking system, this analytical engine, evolved into the colossus of about 1500 vacuum tubes, to the next paradigm, which is looking at sort of this tabulated computer, Apple II. So it's just really shifting from, what's the next paradigm? It could be moving from silicon to graphene, quantum computing, or some other sort of format that will continue to achieve these exponential rates. And then you reckon by 2045 it'll lead to the singularity, and that's where the computational powers exceeds all of human intelligence combined. It's already past the brain power of the mice back in 2015. this is sort of how it works from a business sense. You've had Steve Sasson from Kodak. He was one of the first inventors of the digital camera back in 1975. So he presents this to the board. He's like, hey guys, check what I've been able to do. It was like 0.01 megapixel black or white photo using this massive camera. The board laughed him out of the door. We're Kodak, we sort of make beautiful photos, we use oil canvases, that's our business model, right? And then obviously in 2015 we got camera phones that are greater than 12 megapixels, 1,000 times the resolution, 1,000 times lighter, 1,000 times cheaper. We had Instagram essentially. Well, Kodak went bankrupt, but now they're actually coming up with the Kodak coin, right? So they're trying to make a comeback. It's been delayed, right? But they're trying not to make the same mistake as they did. Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, you can sort of see how you can actually miss out on these very quickly. And the human eye obviously has got 576 megapixels. How many doublings does that take to get there? And how much can we integrate that technology with our biology? It could be smart contacts or augmented reality. That's what we're looking to achieve. So this super well-being is really, as talked about, this Maslow's hierarchy of needs, trying to map out how technologies, that'll help us our basic needs around food, water, shelter. You've got companies like Soylent, they're trying to create all this sort of abundance around food. You got 3D printers that can create these sort of shelter safety needs. You can 3D print houses these days. You've got sort of these other augmented reality, virtual reality platforms to help you with this belongingness if you're ever feeling alone in the space and you're trying to connect to the interwebs. Trying to remove the physical frictions using the VR and other things. Self-esteem, you can share all of the things you share with Facebook Live and other things. Your cognitive needs, that's where sort of the AI platforms you want to be able to combine with your physical needs, and the aesthetic needs, right? So if you don't like what you see with augmented reality, you can actually change what's in front of you, right? So if you want to see a beautiful wall, it'll be a beautiful wall in front of your front yard, right? But this is sort of looking at, okay, what is the next layer? What is self-actualization? We're moving towards a world of automation. So you have Nathan Waters here talking about the automation piece, but how does a basic income come into play where you can give you the free time to actually do what you're really passionate about? And then obviously there's another sort of level of Maslow before he passed away. He introduced this concept called transcendence. And this is where you're starting to try to help other people self-actualize. This is where the SpaceX of the world, the Neuralink of the world, sort of like trying to help other people achieve these little paradigms. And also, transhumanism has made it quite big in the news recently. You got like sort of popularization of the concept in Altered Carbon and Black Mirror season 4. But this guy you see is Meow Ludo Disco Gamma Meow Meow. He's got the Opal card in his hand. They found out about it through, so New South Wales Transport found out about this through the news, and they disabled his card. So he was registered to a different card at the time, so it didn't actually work, the initial disabling, but after he came back from one of the trips he had overseas, he's actually realised his personal card's also disabled too. So he's going to be taking them to court, and it's going to be one of the first cyborg rights court cases. Now, take them on, in the name of privacy and all things transhumanism. So just want to thank our community partners, General Assembly here in Biofoundry from Meow. We also helped out with sort of Singularity University here. We've got sort of science, technology, and future. We've got the Science Party here, Ethereum, effective altruism, basic income, and Flux. Flux is a sort of political party on blockchain. Yeah, we'll talk more about that. So Tom Gordon, first up, is going to be talking about space policy, the future of space. Tom is a science communicator at Xing University. He is a multi-skilled science communicator with a professional background in physics, education, and astronomy. And he's also a policy officer at the Science Party, helping with space policy, which the Labour Party took as well, right? So he's going to be talking about the future of space. Shara Evans sends her apologies, but Shara is the world's #1 female futurist. She's a keynote speaker with Market Clarity, a company that facilitates this, but she was going to talk about AI, the dark side, the good side around that. But unfortunately, she's just at the risk of operations, so she can't make it tonight. Nathan Waters is here today. He's founder of Peerism, Sit Ethereum, and now has joined Consensus, so all things Ethereum. He's probably passionate person I've met through about technology, so he's going to be talking about blockchain and automation. Steve Stevens, I'm not sure if you've seen him here yet, but he's going to be talking about future crime. So he set up a workshop for the Australian police to help them understand what are the dangers of technology that is rapidly accelerating, and if we can't keep up with that, what are the criminals going to be able to do using that technology? All right, so with that, I will pass it on to Tom. Yeah, give him a round of applause.
Okay, so hi, I'm Tom. I will just give you a real quick background to me, so you can know my science and space cred. Ask me any questions at any time also. I did astrophysics and astronomy at university in ANU. I was a second year student of Brian Schmidt, who's a Nobel Prize winning person. He's never thanked me for that, but that's where I come from. I then went to, I did teaching for a while. I also studied overseas in a place called the International Space University. Some of you will know something about the International Space University. You think you don't, but you do, because the guy who set up the International Space University is a guy called Peter Diamandis, and he also set up Singularity University. So he's one of those entrepreneur people as well. So yes, I went over there, studied the International Space Agency, and halfway through that course, I called up a couple of these research groups in Australia for space satellite systems and said, I'm getting this amazing qualification, I'm coming home, give me a job. And they said, yes, we'll do that, it's amazing, but we've run out of funding. So I came back to nothing, and since then I've been working at Sydney University, doing education and outreach to high school students mostly, but still keeping my fingers in pies. And now, yeah, as Peter said, I'm part of the Science Party, one of the executives on the Science Party, and also writing a few policies and helping out where I can. When the Canberra branch of the Science Party happens, that's me. Okay, so I want to start with the past, basically. Really quickly, the past, and I'm only talking like a few weeks ago. You will know the space past, right? But we'll have a look at the really, really recent past of space, so it puts us in a frame of mind, right? This is a picture from the 60s, which is Woomera. That's the Woomera launch facility. That's just a picture of the past. Anyway, you all know this picture. You all probably cried like I did when you saw those two things land at the same time. This is an amazing achievement. This is like the 16th time they've landed a reusable rocket, or SpaceX has landed a reusable rocket, and they did 2 of them at a time. I was watching this with my kids at the time, tears rolling down my face, punching the air, and they shrugged, and they were like, okay, cool. This is just a thing that happens to them. This is just another thing. But as of a few weeks ago, this was science fiction. I think that's amazing. There you go, there's Starman. I actually thought, as I was watching pictures of Starman with the Earth in the background, that Elon Musk had done another troll and put a little robot inside Starman, so I thought he was just going to like do a quick nod to the camera. That would have been amazing. But it brought up a question of what is Starman? Like really, what is that for? Is it for advertising for his company, selling cars? Probably. Is it just another piece of space junk? Yes. Is it? But is that bad? We need to think about this, and we haven't thought about it yet. And the last thing I wanted to mention about the past, and again, this only happened in the middle of January, was the Humanity Star. Have you heard of the Humanity Star? Humanity Star it's actually that thing, or that's a replica of it, but it's that size. It's like a giant mirror ball, about 1 meter wide, and it does nothing except for orbit, and it's going to orbit for the next 90 days. It was launched by that guy from New Zealand, from New Zealand's space agency. Come on. It was launched from New Zealand into space, and it orbits the Earth once every 90 minutes, doing nothing but spinning around, reflecting the light. So what you'll see, if you see it, is a little flash going through the sky. And it's supposed to remind us that, you know, we can do that. It's supposed to remind us that we're all part of the sky. Yes? And not only, it's not only us that can see it, it's everyone that can see it. You don't need telescopes to see it, you don't need big fancy universities to see it, you can just see it with your naked eye. That's the point. But again, just about every astronomer I know is really, really pissed off at this because it's just destroying their observations. Well, it could, anyway. So is it space graffiti, or is he a space genius? Because now we're talking about it. Yeah? And again, a couple of months ago, this was science fiction, right? So all of the stuff I'm going to tell you this evening is, you probably know all of this stuff anyway, but just the perspective that I'm going to use is how we think about it, right? What we do with that information. And it's set up by SpaceX, humanity stuff, getting us to think about something that's already happening. All right, so the future. This is the picture that I was getting. Thank you. This is from a website called AstaRank. Be careful when you say that, AstaRank, which has essentially listed as many asteroids as possible and broken them down in terms of their resources. And we can go and get those resources. And there are companies now that are starting to consider going to get those resources. Right? There's about 10 asteroid mining companies so far. One of them is called Planetary Resources, and Peter Diamandis is part of that as well. And there's one in particular, I don't know if you've seen, yeah, it's just this red dot. This is not great for colorblind people, but there's this red dot that kind of passes through Mars orbit. This is Earth orbit, Mars orbit here. So every now and then it's going to pass through Mars orbit, so really, really close. And it's got about anywhere between $30 and $95 billion worth of profit for mining on it. So people are really considering this, and that's just one of them. There are many, many out there. There are lots that are a long way away that have over $100 trillion of estimated return on investment for going to get the resources from those from those asteroids. That's pretty cool, right? Like I said, there's about 10 different asteroid mining companies considering doing this right now. There are some satellites that have gone, I think later this year, one will land on that asteroid, which is that asteroid called Ryugu, and take some samples and bring them back to Earth. And in about 5 years, we'll have asteroid to Earth return missions, like sample return missions. Yeah.
Who owns
that one's
space?
Good question. Good question.
What about
There's a thing called the Outer Space Treaty, right? And the Treaty of the Moon, right? So I think it's called the Treaty of the Moon, or a Moon Treaty or something. The Moon Treaty is based on the Antarctica Treaty, so no one can go and mine the moon. But that doesn't extend, as far as I'm aware, to asteroids, right? And as soon as you say things like there's $95 trillion or billion dollars or $100 trillion, whatever, on an asteroid, people get very nervous about saying who can and can't have it, right? So yeah, we don't know who owns them, but we need to start thinking about that. Because if we don't, it's going to happen. And then we have to, backpedal. You know what I mean? So yes, we don't know. We don't know who owns it. I guess humanity owns it, right? So if you go and get the resources and bring it back for us, it's a real slippery slope, that one. You can't really say that. Anyway, so that's asteroid mining. I'm going to come back to the point in a second. Then there's this project here called Mars One. Again, you probably have heard of Mars One. But they're down to, they're essentially running a reality TV project, a reality TV show, trying to select the first people to go to Mars and never come back. These are colonists of Mars, and they're one-way trip. And there's about 100 of them left. This guy is one of them. His name's Josh Richards. He's from Perth. He's an interesting character. He also went to the International Space University for a little bit. hangs around doing comedy shows to make money and speaking tours. He's now written a book called Becoming Martian. And his plan in the next decade or so is to be the first person to go to Mars and never come back. I talked to him about it, and that's an interesting thing for us to think about. Wow, imagine that, going to Mars. That's cool, right? And then we move on. He's got to think about that every day. It affects his life in profound ways, right? He can't have kids, basically, because well, he can, but then he'd have to leave them, right? That's huge. I think that's really huge. And he has to think about that for us. I think that's pretty rad. There's also another project here which I really like. Is called High Seas. This is a project where they're sending students basically to live in Mars-like conditions. This one's in Hawaii, in that little dome up there in the middle of somewhere where there's no contact with anyone. And they put them in this dome for about 8 months. The last mission was about 1 year. This one's 8 months. It's going on right now. It's just started. And this is a girl called Lisa who is from Sydney, and she's in there right now doing this project. They take it to the extreme where they have everything in there that they have to have for 8 months. They have no contact from the outside world except for through communications that they would have if they were on Mars, and they delay it. They delay the communications as if they were on Mars. So you can't just call up and say, hey, yeah, we're out of food. They have to radio that in or communicate that. It gets delayed as if you were on Mars, and then a restock of whatever you need gets delivered to you as if you were on Mars months later. Right? This is a project where they're starting to think about what you do if you're on Mars. It's a weird kind of thing. I was asked to talk about the future of space, but this is happening now in order for us to think about the future. Yeah? There's another group of people who are starting to think about the future of space, and that's the Science Party, like shameless plug, I'm sorry. But as far as I'm aware, and I did have a quick look, and I have had looks over the years, and I think the Science Party is the only federal political party with a science policy. Not even the people who have just announced that they're going to make a space agency have a space policy. I think that's a bit weird. One of the things in the Science Party space policy is to establish a space agency, so maybe that's the same thing. I'll give them that, but still, we're the only ones with a really in-depth space policy. And it was written with a whole bunch of experts. It was written with people who are really interested in this, like me and other people in the Science Party. It was written with experts in the field, entrepreneurs, what's his last? Tim from Delta V. What's his last name?
Tim Parsons.
Tim Parsons from Delta V. He helped us out. Academics like Andrew Dempster from UNSW. Astronauts like Greg Chamatov from NASA. He helped write this space policy. So we're thinking about it. And we're one of the only groups that are thinking about it. We have to prepare for what being in space is like.
Just incidentally, so what's the big picture on an Australian space agency? Might that happen? What could make that happen? Or
it's been very, very quiet since the meeting they had in Adelaide last year, and I think that's because they're trying to figure out if they can fit it into the budget. So we have no idea until the budget.
So it's possible?
It's possible. But who knows what's going to happen that takes money away from that.
What do they mean by a space agency? Do they mean like a launch facility? Do they mean a
Nope.
research facility? Or what?
A space agency would be very small, kind of admin stuff that helps it helps develop projects with other space agencies, basically. In the Science Party space policy, part of making a space agency is to then become a member state of ESA, the European Space Agency. So we would be on similar kind of grounds as Canada, And look what's happened to Canada in terms of space. So that's what we're trying to aim for. Now, whether that's the Australian government's perspective, I don't know. It's all going to come out in the budget. Whatever the budget says, that's what they're going to do. Yep.
What's the Kiwis just recently launched something? Do they have a similar thing, or how did they get to that point?
That guy who launched that is a billionaire. So yeah, it's basically him. The space agency.
Can't we knock on his door?
Yeah, I don't know too much about the New Zealand Space Agency. There isn't much there. Which is inspiring a little bit, right? Because there's not much there, and yet they still launch a useless thing, right? There's been so much comment about that, the Humanity Star. Like it's as useless as Sputnik was, right? But was Sputnik really useless? No, it was really, really useful, helpful. Kind of kicked off everything, right? Okay, so what I've not included, just a few things I've not thought about, the space elevator or Google X Prize. I've not talked about space tourism, like the BFR and Virgin Galactic. I'm not talking about terraforming. These are all parts of, space future. I'm not talking about that. But I just wanted to bring it back to my point of the future of space is happening, and it's happening right now. Right? It happened a few weeks ago when we landed or sent Starman to space. It happened 2 months ago when we sent Humanity Star to get us to think about it, space graffiti. It's happening right now when people are training to go to Mars. It's happening right now when people are writing books about how to become a Martian. There are people who have talked about or have commented that the first person to walk on Mars is already born. I reckon it's that guy. I reckon it's Josh. I reckon he's going to be one of the first people to step on Mars, right? So if you ask me, he's already a Martian, right? If we start thinking about space like this, that it's happening, and it's going to happen if we think about it or not. Society's not catching up, but we've got to do that. And that's why groups like this come together and talk about space. It's happening, right? We've got to stop thinking that it's just in the future. It's not. It's happening now. Like, now.
So it's not future day, it's present day.
It's present day. I wish someone happy future day today, and they were very confused. Because they didn't know if you could actually wish someone future day. Say it yesterday. There's a new space race. That's what I'm getting at. There's a new space race, and it's happening right in front of our eyes. Go to Adelaide. There's a huge space industry building up there. These guys are waiting for that space agency. And if they don't get it, they're going to do what they're doing anyway. No one's going to stop them. So the future of space is basically it's happening right now, and it's not going to come from the traditional places like governments. It's not going to come from where you would expect. It's going to come from people like us, people like Elon Musk, people like Paddy Newman, who's making his own ion drive to get from here to Mars with the fuel the same size as an aluminium Coke can. It's going to happen those ways, not the ways we expect. But we need to start thinking about it now. Cool? Cool. Yay.
Has anyone got questions for Tom? Are you guys comfortable back there as well? Yeah, okay.
As a science communicator, how do you handle people asking you questions around why do we spend money on stuff in space when there's issues on Earth?
It depends on who asks, right? So I deal with high school students a lot and undergrads.
Right.
And they don't tend to ask those questions.
Right.
So I don't have to answer that question.
Okay.
But there are people, like just the other day I was at my 3-year-old kid's friend's birthday party, and there was a person who didn't believe that we went to the moon. There are those people who exist.
Yeah, right.
So you start talking about space to them, and they're like, well, let's solve all the other problems first. Yeah, sure, but we can also go to space. We can also do that. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. You can bring out all these figures of NASA budget is a fraction of their defense budget for Americans. You can bring it, we spend more money now buying things off other people's space agencies or space programs than we would if we were just part of this, our own space agency giving money to ESA. We spend more money now than we would have to if we were part of the European Space Agency. It's important research. The best example, and I'm only gifted this a couple of weeks ago when Elon Musk put Starman in space, right? That got everybody talking. But what is it for? Like, why did we do that? And it kind of doesn't matter because we get to talk about why he did that. Is that space junk? Well, I don't know, let's talk about that. Is it useless? No, because it got a lot of, well, I don't think so, because it got a lot of attention, and it got a lot of attention for, what is space research? What is launching something? What does that mean? Like, who owns that car now? It's the same question you had, You're talking about it and you're discussing this stuff that people previously were not talking about. So when people do ask me that, I don't get frustrated because at least you're talking about it. Probably not going to change their mind, but at least we've had that discussion. But you always have to talk about the things that, there are always those people. But I try to, like flat earthers, there are those people. They're fun to talk to. Go back.
What are the social implications of setting up a colony on another planet?
It's a great question, right? So I was speaking to Josh about that when I interviewed him, and he said he's a really strong pick for going to Mars because of his background. He's not an engineer, or he's not he's a scientist, but he did an undergrad in science, and then when he did other things, mostly he's done teaching and comedy and acting and all of that sort of stuff, right? So then he's a strong candidate to go because of his other stuff that he did in getting to where he is now.
Because he's not funny.
I don't know.
He's a good comedian.
His humour is unique, that's for sure. He's got a character called it's Kevin the slightly misadjusted emotionally bear, or something like that. That's the koala bear. Kevin the koala bear, I don't know. And I guess if you're in a capsule with that for 9 months, it would get old.
What about the flip side though? What about everyone here when this ceases to be our only option?
Say again, what if?
How does our thinking change when Earth isn't the only option? Does it shift? Because someone goes to Mars.
Yeah, I don't know. Amazing though. I reckon that's profound. And that's why I want to start thinking about Josh as a Martian now. I already think he's a Martian. And that changes the way that I look at him. It changes the way that I think about humans. Because we're no longer humans anymore. We're humans and Martians. Yeah, for sure. It's huge. Like you've always seen those people that say, when we finally find extraterrestrial life, that's going to be a humanity-defining moment. Right? But we could make that ourselves by sending people to Mars. Humanity-defining moment. And I think that's amazing. And I want to think about that before it happens. Otherwise, we're just going to be catching up. And we don't have a choice then. Yeah.
Sorry if this was covered in any way because I came late. Law. You said who owns the car and things like that. I think if we've got any Dr. Evils on this planet, we've got the nice one, Elon Musk. But what if he gets to the moon first? What if he gets to wherever he wants first and he just goes, it's mine. Like, they can declare all the laws they want here on the planet, but they've got to actually enforce the attempt to do something.
So there's rules about the moon.
Whose rules?
It's UN. The UN has
if you're up there with
treaty.
guns, why do you care what the UN says?
They have bigger guns.
We don't have the United Federation of Planets yet, but we care what they think down here. I'm just wondering if it's a...
there are people thinking about that, I guess. There are space lawyers around. Absolutely there are. But we have not thought about it nearly enough. We have not considered this enough. you'll notice there's a theme of what I don't know the answers, but I think we need to consider it and we need to chat about it now because it's going to happen. Like I said, in a few years we'll be bringing stuff back from asteroids. Whose is that? Like bringing resources back.
Maybe we need someone to go out to Mars and call themselves a messiah.
Yeah, sure.
And that will start fundraising exercise. Despite the wrath of the science party members and skeptics, but
We're still arguing over seas and even Antarctic, you know, lands, like drawings, geo-boundaries and everything. I mean, laws are meaningless unless you have the ability to enforce them.
Yep.
I think it's his assets if he wants to come back, sure.
But that is, so Elon Musk as well wants to go to Mars and not come back. That's his plan.
No, he says he wants to come back.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought he said he wanted to die on Mars.
He's going to come back and go.
He wanted to retire on Mars. Holiday house on Earth.
Just one more question from the back here. And then,
So that picture you showed about the group of people going to Mars, that kind of got me worried. So the question is that voluntary? Is that group of people, is that voluntary? So my question is, wouldn't there be some kind of sampling bias there in terms of, there's the kind of people that would volunteer to go there? Is that really representative of the kind of people that humanity would want to send to a different planet?
It's a great question. It is absolutely voluntary, so yeah, it's a skewed sampling. And I guess amongst that group, they're going to try and pick the most appropriate through psychological testing and abilities to do stuff. They're not just going to need scientists. In fact, the scientists are probably the least people they want over there. They want plumbers and farmers and psychologists, those people, doctors, teachers with guns or not, whatever. Those are the people they want there, right? There's an excellent film, it's coming out soon in Australia called Seat 25, which is, it's trying to answer that question. So the setup is there's 25 seats to go to Mars. 24 people have been selected, and they're all the astronomers and the engineers and the test pilots and all. And there's one seat that they draw out of a hat, and you put your name in. You draw it out of a hat, and then you go, and you don't come back.
Do you get volunteering to go into the hat, or is it?
Yeah. So again, same thing. But there's a girl with a family gets picked, and the whole film is her trying to figure out what she does. It's a cool film. When it comes out, C25, really cool film that tries to answer that question about who's the best person to send. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
all right. If anyone wants to take a break, there's a bathroom just around the corner, and also in the kitchen there's some coffee and tea. But next up we've got Nathan Waters.
I was in for you.